see how much you throw. Okay, so live event is started. And right now we're the only 2 people here. Okay, it's 11:30. I'm still waiting for more people to join us. You can give a couple more minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started. If you're just joining us, go ahead and put something in the Q&A part so that I know you're here. Introduce yourself. One more minute, and then I will get it started. Jeff's here. Todd's here. I haven't seen Todd in, shoot, almost a year probably. He's joining from Utah, which is great. Okay, I'm going to get started. And I'm sure we'll have more people attend, and then we do make these recordings available, so I'm sure we'll have lots of other people watch if they could make it on this live event. So I just wanted to welcome everybody today to our November Omaha 365 user group meeting. And we are continuing to have these virtually until we receive clearance to come back and meet in person. But until then, we are going to continue doing these virtually. And so we are scheduling meetings for 2021. And I wanted you to look at the website here. So if you ever wanted to know what's going on, if you go to omaha365.org, this is our website here. And on the front page, you'll see upcoming meetings. There's also links to the recordings from the previous meetings. And then if you click on the actual events tab up there, you'll see the upcoming meetings. So right now we're scheduled for December. We don't have any schedule for 2021 yet, but we'll be working on that. So 2021 is Emily Mancini. I'm sorry, December's Emily Mancini, and she's going to be talking about embedding user experience in your out-of-the-box solutions. So that'd be great. Emily also spoke at our Omaha 365 conference. So we appreciate her volunteering to do that in December. So that'll be on December 11th, which is about a month away from now. I believe December 11th is on a Friday. So not Thursday, but it's going to be on Friday. So that's all the announcements I have. I'm going to turn it over to Alex. And let me just figure out the controls here. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex. I'm going to allow Alex to share. There you go, Alex, you're live. And I'm going to allow Alex to share his screen. So thank you, Alex, for volunteering to speak to our meeting today.
All right, thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes. No, I just see your camera. Okay, let's try.
Let me try again.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So hello everyone, my name is Alex Terentiev, and welcome to the session SharePoint Online Customization Toolset. First, few words about myself. I'm an Office Development MVP, Custom Solutions Architect and Lead Developer in Sharepointalist, located in Los Angeles. I have more than 10 years of experience with SharePoint and extensive experience in front-end development and also in other parts of Microsoft 365 system. Currently, I'm a Microsoft 365 PNP team member, and I have been 3 times awarded by SharePoint Dev Team during SharePoint Dev Kitchen events in 2017, 2018, and 2019. But more important, of course, is social media. So follow me on Twitter, read my blog, visit my GitHub profile, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Few words about the company I'm working for. It's called Sharepointalist. We do both consulting and products. So from consulting perspective, it's everything around SharePoint, around Microsoft 365, migrations, custom development, Office development, different bots, Microsoft Teams, and so on and so forth. And from products perspective, check out our Navigator product for Teams and SharePoint that allows you to aggregate documents across your tenant and display them in a beautiful grouped way based on the configurations that you've done. And now let's jump to actual topic of the session, and let's start with the SharePoint Online and Office 365 ecosystem. So before Office 365 or before cloud, SharePoint was a pretty standalone product, and developers as well as power users were implementing some customizations to work inside SharePoint or to connect it with other line of business applications. But currently, SharePoint Online is a part of large Office 365 ecosystem, or even Microsoft 365 ecosystem that also includes Windows and identity platform. And SharePoint is highly integrated with all other apps or suites or services that are available in this ecosystem, right? And even more, it's hard to imagine SharePoint and especially SharePoint development without integration with Azure. That brings you additional features. It allows you to host your web applications, to use machine learning, to use bot registrations, to have some SQL databases, and so on and so forth. So nowadays, SharePoint developer and SharePoint power user or maker can think about SharePoint only. He should think about the whole ecosystem and how it can be used to achieve business goals in more efficient way. But during this session, let's focus on SharePoint customizations and what building blocks are available to customize SharePoint experiences. And selection of this or that tool is based on requirements and goals of your project. And of course, you don't need just to select the single customization block. You can mix and match them if you need to. And here are the building blocks available for SharePoint customizations. The first one is SharePoint add-ins. The next one is SharePoint framework, SharePoint REST API, Microsoft Graph, webhooks, column and view formatting, site designs and site scripts, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Microsoft 365 PNP. And we can also look at these tools from perspective of users' expertise in customizations. So end users are kind of low expertise in customizations, and pro developers can probably do whatever they want. And here is the breakdown of these tools from the expertise perspective. So as you can see, even end users can find something helpful in these building blocks for them. They can use, for example, SharePoint PNP or Microsoft 365 PNP, and we will talk about that later. Makers can also use Power Automate and probably even in some point Power Apps. Low-code developers can use column and view formatting, Power Apps, site designs and site scripts, and also SharePoint PNP. And pro developers can use whatever they want. And from perspective of this session, I will not dig deeply into any of these tools. What I want to do, I want to provide some overview of all these tools and allow you to make a high-level decision of what you need to dig into in your next product or project. And let's start with the first tool. The first one is SharePoint add-ins, or previously they were named as SharePoint apps. And although we are talking about SharePoint Online, but I also included information if this or that tool is available in SharePoint on-premises. And SharePoint add-ins are available in SharePoint 2013, 2016, 2019, and of course SharePoint Online. So the official definition of SharePoint add-ins is a SharePoint add-in is a self-contained, isolated piece of functionality that extends the capabilities of SharePoint websites to solve a well-defined business problem. So that's why at the beginning it was named as apps, because it's just a definition of any application that runs inside SharePoint. So SharePoint add-ins is a mature model for SharePoint customizations. It was presented in SharePoint 2013 and is still fully supported by Microsoft. The code of SharePoint add-in is hosted somewhere. It's not hosted directly on the SharePoint site where you use this add-in or where you install the add-in. It usually lives either in add-in web in SharePoint. It's a specifically generated SharePoint site, and or remote web application. Usually it's Azure, or you can use any other web hosting as well. And based on these hosting models, we have two types of add-ins: SharePoint hosted add-ins and provider hosted add-ins. So for SharePoint hosted add-ins, usually they are centered around different SharePoint components or artifacts like lists, pages, web parts, and so on and so forth. When you're developing SharePoint hosted add-ins, you can use only client-side code, no server-side code available for this type of add-ins. And all the code that is developed, all the SharePoint hosted add-in code is isolated, and it lives in an add-in web. So basically, if you install your SharePoint hosted add-in on some site collection in your SharePoint environment, in your SharePoint tenant, at the moment of installation, the new web will be generated, and all the code will be placed in this specific web. So when and where to use this type of add-ins? So to be frankly saying, SharePoint hosted add-ins are not commonly used, and we even had maybe like 2 years ago, we had a conversation on Twitter when this type of customization is the best one we can use for what scenarios, and we found kind of 3 different scenarios for this type of add-ins. The first one is if you have any security considerations for isolated environment, because as I mentioned, all the code is running in a separate web. Yes, it's a good scenario when you can use SharePoint hosted add-ins. The second one is if you have requirements to distribute your client-side solution through Office App Store, you can use SharePoint hosted add-ins as well. Small remark here. We will talk about SharePoint framework later during this session, and like last 2 months, SharePoint framework solutions are available in Office App Store as well. So now I would say that it's better still to use SharePoint framework instead of SharePoint hosted add-ins. And the last scenario, if you like or love iframes, you can use the SharePoint hosted add-ins as well. Second type of add-ins are provider-hosted add-ins. These types of add-ins are commonly used in many scenarios, and usually these types of add-ins are centered around some remote web application or some remote data source. And business logic is mainly in that case is a remote server-side code, and usually it's hosted on Azure. Again, you can use any other hosting, any other web hosting, even your kind of local IIS if you want to. But usually the code of provider-hosted add-in is stored on or hosted on Azure. And the main feature of provider-hosted add-ins, they allow you to elevate privileges. There are different other techniques that allow you to elevate privileges as well, but in provider-hosted add-ins, it's really easy to implement, to configure the elevation of the privileges. So when and where to use? The first one, of course, if you need to elevate privileges. So, for example, if you're familiar with PNP provisioning, it was based on add-ins as well, because you could allow to do anything inside your add-in as an admin, even if a simple general user is trying to create and provision the site. Second scenario, if you need to implement some complex server-side business logic, or if you already have this server-side business logic and you want to inject it into SharePoint, you can use add-ins, provider-hosted add-ins as well. And if you need to connect with the other line of business applications, you can look into provider-hosted add-ins as well. From resources standpoint, the only important one is official documentation. Again, because this tool is mature, it has a lot of documentation, official documentation, it has a lot of samples, how to implement this or that inside your add-ins, how to host your add-ins, how to add feature framework to your add-in, and so on and so forth. And by the way, we will share the presentation, so you will have access to all these links after the meeting. The next block is SharePoint framework, or SPFx, and it's fully supported in SharePoint Online. It's kind of 50% supported in SharePoint 2016, and maybe around 80% supported in SharePoint 2019. So the SharePoint framework is an engine to develop SharePoint client-side customizations, or in other words, it's a modern way to develop SharePoint customizations. In case of SharePoint framework, again, it's a client-side only model. There is no server-side code, so you can still do different requests, HTTP requests to any backends you want, but it will not be part of your SPFx solution. SPFx is just a client-side solution. What good about SharePoint framework? It provides easy integration with SharePoint and Office 365 data in the code, because it provides out-of-the-box helpers for REST APIs, for SharePoint REST APIs, and for Microsoft Graph API. SharePoint framework is based on modern and mobile-first UI, and basically it means that it's much easier to develop customizations in SharePoint modern UI using SharePoint framework. And also, it's based on commonly used front-end or client-side or web development tools, and it allows you actually to bring the latest and greatest from front-end world into SharePoint. And SharePoint is still a website, so it's actually great to use whatever is available for web development inside SharePoint as well. Another kind of killing feature of SharePoint framework, it works not only inside SharePoint, it allows you to develop customizations also for Microsoft Teams and in preview for Office apps as well. So currently in version 1.11 of SharePoint framework, or in beta version of 1.11, you can also develop customizations for Outlook, which is really cool as well. And one more thing I want to mention about SharePoint framework, first-party SharePoint components are developed using SharePoint framework as well, and it makes SPFx a really unique tool, because first-party developers and third-party developers are in the same boat. So SharePoint dev team or SPFx dev team actually feels our pain if there are any issues, if there are bugs, or if SPFx behaves not how it should. So what we have inside SharePoint framework, what customization points we have there? First of all, we have client-side web parts. If you are familiar with ASP.NET web parts, the idea here is the same. These are just components or controls that can be added to the page to solve some business problem. And good thing about SharePoint Framework web parts, they are available in SharePoint 2016, SharePoint 2019, SharePoint Online. They're available both on classic and modern pages. They're available as Teams tabs as well. And in preview, they're also available as Outlook add-ins. So if you're thinking about or you need to develop SharePoint web part, please look into SharePoint Framework web parts. The next customization point is extensions. Extensions allow you to customize or extend modern SharePoint UI and behavior. Extensions are available in SharePoint 2019 and SharePoint Online. And currently there are 4 types of extensions available. The first one is Application Customizer. It allows you to add custom header and footer to the page or inject custom JS or CSS to the page. The next one is Command Set Customizer. It allows you to add custom commands to list command bar and list item context menu. Next one is Field Customizer. It allows you to provide custom rendering to list columns. And the last one is Search Query Modifier that allows you to modify search query before it actually is sent to the server for processing. The next customization point is single part app pages. These are not non-editable pages, templates or layouts inside SharePoint that can contain only single web parts. So they're pretty similar to single page applications in front-end world. And technically, they are not part of SPFx. They're just layouts available in your SharePoint, but usually people talk about these app pages in the context of SPFx and in the context of SPFx web parts. And the last customization point in SPFx is library components. These are reusable SPFx solution that you can deploy separately from your web parts, from your extensions. You can use some, you can implement some reusable code in this library component and reference this library component from any other SharePoint framework solution. So it's similar to DLLs in .NET world. So when and where to use SPFx? First of all, to customize or extend modern SharePoint UI, to create modern client-side web parts. If your business logic is something like client-side code plus some HTTP or REST requests, notification hubs, and so on and so forth, SPFx is a great solution here as well. If you want to create apps that will work in SharePoint and Microsoft Teams and as an Office add-ins, use SharePoint Framework as well. From resources standpoint, there are multiple resources. The first one is official documentation, entry point for official documentation for SPFx. The next one is a GitHub repository where you can submit your questions and issues around SharePoint Framework. Next one is a developer blog. A SharePoint developer blog where you can find all the announcements and not only around SPFx, but around the whole SharePoint development ecosystem as well. And I would recommend also to follow SharePoint and Office Dev on Twitter, again, to get the latest and greatest from SharePoint world. The next tool is SharePoint REST API, and again, it's a mature tool that is available since SharePoint 2013, and basically it's just a set of REST endpoints to work with SharePoint data. So SharePoint REST API allows you to perform create, read, update, delete operations from any SharePoint customization, including add-ins, SharePoint framework, custom scripts, etc., and even more general, if you're developing some custom solution and the technology you're using supports REST requests, you can use SharePoint REST API from these solutions as well. The only thing you should remember, of course, you need to authorize your requests. And it can be done either with the form digest from SharePoint if you just need to get information from SharePoint, or you need to request auth access token if you're going to create, update, or delete something inside SharePoint. SharePoint REST API is easy to use in any JavaScript code because natively it supports JSON format, and JSON format is basically a native format for JavaScript as well. Any JSON object is a native object inside JavaScript. So when and where to use, the main scenario is to work with SharePoint data in your client-side customizations, including SharePoint framework. You can also create different external applications, including some web jobs or scripts or console applications, whatever you want. From resources standpoint, I would recommend to use two of those. The first one is, again, official documentation around SharePoint REST API. And the second one is REST API metadata explorer created by Sergey Sergeyev. So it's kind of good way to see all the endpoints available in REST API, to learn about different metadata around this or that endpoint. And also Sergey is providing some logs of or history, what has been changed in the REST APIs like every month. Next one is Microsoft Graph, and Microsoft Graph is available in SharePoint Online only. And by the way, this Microsoft Graph Giraffe, it's an official mascot of Graph, and why they decided to select giraffe, because like giraffe is similar to graph. That's why they decided to make giraffe their mascot. And as you can see, these dots on this giraffe are similar to entities connection inside Microsoft Graph. So Microsoft Graph is a RESTful API. Again, it's a RESTful endpoints, REST endpoints for a different Office 365 or Microsoft 365 resources, such as users, groups, documents, sites, teams, dynamics, and so on and so forth. So main feature of Microsoft Graph, it allows you to access various data throughout the Office 365 ecosystem, and now even including dynamics. And one small remark here is Microsoft Graph is relatively new. I believe it's maybe 2 or 3 years. So they're still working on providing all the endpoints in the Microsoft Graph. So for example, some endpoints that are available in SharePoint REST API are not available in Microsoft Graph. For example, if I remember correctly, you cannot work with SharePoint list item attachments using Microsoft Graph. So in that case, you still need to kind of fall back to SharePoint REST APIs. But for most resources, even inside SharePoint and across Microsoft 365, you can use Microsoft Graph to access the data. And killing feature of Microsoft Graph, it allows you to easily construct requests and access data based on connected entities. So a good example is some attendees of a meeting in a user's calendar. So if you are, for example, in some SharePoint customization, before Graph, what we need to do, we need to get a user from some SharePoint API, get, for example, his email, then we need to request Outlook permissions, request user's calendar from the Outlook, request specific meeting, and then get attendees from this meeting, right? When you're using Microsoft Graph, you can use just single request. It will be like /me/ calendar /meeting /meeting ID /attendees. That's all. So it's much easier to construct this construct this request, and instead of like 4 or 5 requests, you just need to send one request to get all the information that you need. And of course, when you work with Microsoft Graph, you need to be authenticated as well. So you will need to get Azure AD access token or Auth2 access token and configure a set of permissions that you will be using inside Microsoft Graph. And one remark here as well. So if you're using Microsoft Graph inside SharePoint framework customizations, you don't need to acquire access token because this part is done by SharePoint framework engine. So when and where to use? The main scenario, of course, is to access Office 365 data, and another scenario you can also provide different application lifecycle management operations on different Office 365 entities. So you can create groups, you can create teams, you can create even, I believe, sensitivity labels, all this stuff. So you can add new users to your tenant and so on and so forth. So if you're not familiar with Microsoft 365 CLI, I'll be talking about CLI later during the Microsoft 365 PnP slide, but Microsoft 365 CLI is based on different graph requests as well. From resources perspective, the first one is official documentation on Microsoft Graph. The second one is Graph Explorer. This is a tool that allows you to play around with different Graph Explorers. It's kind of website where you can log into your Microsoft 365 tenant and run different requests, graph requests, just inside this UI. You don't need to develop any code, any customizations. You can just provide the URL of the request, provide the body of the request, and see if you have enough permissions, required permissions, and what response you will get from there. The next one is code samples and SDKs. So Microsoft Graph contains SDKs for C#, for iOS, for Android, and also samples on how to use this SDK. So if you're planning to develop some custom solution for these platforms, you can use SDKs as well. Next one is GitHub repository with community samples, where people from community share their experiences from real-world projects of what can be achieved using Microsoft Graph. And the last one is Microsoft Graph Postman collections. If you're familiar with the Postman application, it's similar to Graph Explorer. It allows you to perform different post and get requests on your machine. So Postman collections just contain a list, a set of almost all the available Graph endpoints. You can just click it on Postman and run the request and check what you will get from there. One, SharePoint Webhooks. So SharePoint Webhooks are available in SharePoint 2019 and SharePoint Online. And the SharePoint Webhooks allow developers to subscribe on specific events that occur in SharePoint with remote handlers. So if we compare the webhooks to, for example, SharePoint event receiver, receivers that we had in SharePoint on premises, so webhooks handle only ED events, so the events that already happened, right? So event receivers on premises, we could handle ING events, so when something is happening, and ED events when something has happened, right? With webhooks, you can handle only ED events. Good thing about webhooks, these are regular HTTP services or regular web API. They're easier to implement than WCF services that were kind of standard services for SharePoint on premises. And you can use any technology, not only C# or .NET, to implement your webhooks. When the webhook is registered, you need to provide resource, service notification URL, and expiration date. Resource is a type of event you want to handle and what entity you want to use for handling. So you should provide, for example, the list ID, and for example, you want to handle item added event. Server notification URL is the URL of your endpoint, of your handler, and expiration date allows you to register your webhook for a specific amount of time. Maximum is 6 months. And I believe this is a really great thing, expiration date, because if you remember again, event receivers on premises, sometimes probably you saw the situation when there were like hundreds of event receivers to some lists on your environment, and nobody even know why they are needed and what they're doing, and developers who implemented them are gone, and it just like ugly, dirty solution, not solution, but farm, and you don't know what to do with them, right? So webhooks will just die in 6 months if you are not re-registering them. So in that case, your tenant will be in more clean state. I think about webhooks. They are available only for SharePoint list items events, and underneath under list items, of course, it's not only items but documents as well, because documents are items as well. But for list items, we can cover a lot of different events. It's not only when the item is added or deleted or updated. We can handle such events as checked in, checked out, attachment added, and so on and so forth. So when and where to use, of course, handle SharePoint list items events remotely. And from resources standpoint, official documentation is enough, because webhooks are really easy. It's just official documentation describes how to configure the webhook, how to register it, and then you just need to implement your code on a backend on your endpoint, where you do something with SharePoint data that you had from this, that you received from this webhook. And now we will be talking more about power user stuff, not only development stuffs. And first topic here is column and view formatting. It's available in SharePoint Online and partially available in SharePoint 2019, partially because column formatting is available and view formatting is not available. And what column and view formatting allows, it allows you to change list columns and views appearance using JSON. So you don't need to develop something to write code. It's just JSON specification, JSON schema that you need to know, and that's it. So there is no code, no deployment, and power users with expertise in JSON can apply this formatting. Column and view formatting is a SharePoint out-of-the-box feature with the kind of UI available, and let me actually show you why it's kind of UI. So, can you see my browser? Hopefully, yes.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So here I have column formatting applied to my progress column. And if I go inside column settings, we have format this column. And yes, it provides you some kind of templates that you can use, right? But if you want to use something more complex, or you want to provide some formulas, some actions inside your format, you have advanced mode. And in advanced mode, you only have this text area where you need to write your JSON, and you don't have IntelliSense inside, you don't have code formatting inside your text area. It's just plain JSON text that you need to probably copy and paste inside, right? So it's not the best UI you would expect, but it is what it is. All right. So when and where to use? To customize columns experience in list views, you can do something like color coding, KPIs, you can provide action links, you can even, I believe, call Power Automate flow from the column formatting as well. And if you're interested in column and view formatting, Chris Kent demos different features of column and view formatting probably each 2 weeks or each month during Microsoft 365 PnP calls. So use this one if you're interested in column and view formatting. The second scenario is to customize views experience as well. And if you see the screenshots of this on this slide, so the right screenshot shows you how you can customize the view. So it's completely, it doesn't look like a SharePoint list items, right? It looks like some cards in your list. So you can do a lot using this column and view formatting. From resources perspective, the first two links are how you can apply column and view formatting respectively, what customizations you can do, what commands are available for these customizations, and so on and so forth. The third link is a GitHub repository with community samples around column and view formatting. And the last, And the last one is a column formatter web part developed by Chris Kent as well. And I want to show it to you again. This is the out-of-the-box UI, and it's ugly, let's be honest. That's why Chris Kent created this web part that allows you to create your JSON in more user-friendly formats. So if you click New, you can select a column type. For example, again, we will select number to be to create something similar to what we have here. You can select data bars, you click OK, and you have some properties here that you can configure. You see the preview. If you want to, you can look at the code. And this one has syntax highlighting, it has IntelliSense, so it's much easier to create your column formatting here. You develop your JSON, and then you can save it as, you can just download it as a JSON file, you can copy it to clipboard, save to local document library, apply it to specific site column, and so on and so forth. So it's easier to develop your column formatting here and then just paste it into the column inside your list. Right, next one. Site designs and site scripts, or from Microsoft Ignite 2020, we can name them site templates. So site designs and site scripts are available in SharePoint Online, and they're used to automate provisioning of new or existing modern SharePoint sites using custom JSON configurations. So you can think of site designs as site templates in SharePoint on premises. Basically, you create a consistent set of actions that will be applied to a new site when it's being created. Good thing about site designs, they can be also applied to already created modern sites. So, for example, if you developed or created multiple site collections prior to developing some branding, some site designs for your company, you can still apply these site designs to already created sites as well. Site designs are not kind of standalone entities inside SharePoint. They are tied to site types, site collection types inside SharePoint. So when you register site design, you kind of tell SharePoint if it's site design for a communication site or it's site design for a team site. But you can basically use the same site design and register it twice, once for communication site and one for team site, but it is what it is. So one more good thing about site designs, they can be scoped to a selected set of users or to selected groups. And in that case, you can have separate site templates for different, let's say, departments in your organization. And people from IT department will see only IT site designs. People from HR department will see only HR site designs. So we talked about site designs. What are site scripts? Site scripts are just JSON files with the ordered list of actions that will be applied when the site design is executed. And there are a lot of actions you can have inside scripts, like apply some SharePoint or custom theme, create list, create content type, add navigation, provision some SharePoint framework solutions, and you can even call some Power Automate, from where you can call HTTP endpoint and do whatever you want. And site design can contain multiple site scripts that will run sequentially. For example, again, if we have different site designs for, let's say, HR and IT, but we have the same document library that should be provisioned to both sites, in that case, we can have this document library provisioning as a separate site script and apply the same site script to both site designs. Site designs and site scripts are registered using PowerShell and REST APIs. There is no out-of-the-box UI available at that point to either create or register site designs and site scripts. So when and where to use? Everything around modern provisioning, you can apply custom theming, custom coloring to the sites, you can apply different SharePoint framework extensions, provision custom content, and to create consistent site provisioning templates for different departments in your organization. From resources perspective, the first one is official documentation around site designs. The second one is community samples for site designs. It contains different site scripts of what you can do using site scripts and site designs. And the last one is a web part developed by Yannick Planevu that provides you the UI to actually register your site design and site script. So as I mentioned, there is no out-of-the-box UI, but there is one created by a community member. Next one, Microsoft Power Apps. Power Apps are available in SharePoint Online and 50% in SharePoint on premises, and I will explain why. So Power Apps is a service that lets you build business applications that will run on your mobile device, on web, and there is no coding experience required. It's just drag and drop. You just select the components you want to put on your form, for example, and you probably need to be familiar with the kind of Excel formula syntax to provide some additional custom logic. So Microsoft Power Apps are not unique to SharePoint. This is a service in Office 365 App Suite. So you can use Power Apps with other services inside Office 365, and I believe there are even connectors to outside services as well. For example, you can use, I believe, Dropbox as a data source for your Power App as well. Power Apps allow you to create mobile applications connected to SharePoint lists. And in that case, you can use not only a SharePoint Online list, but on-premises list as well. And also Power Apps allow you to customize SharePoint list forms. And this part is available in SharePoint Online only. And this is kind of a new way to develop custom forms. So we had InfoPath in on-premises, and it will be retired, I believe, in 2021. And currently you need to use Power Apps instead. So when and where to use? Two main scenarios, to create mobile application with the SharePoint list as a data source, or to customize SharePoint list forms. But there is also a hidden gem of Power Apps. It allows you to quickly prototype your UI for different POCs, because it's like really you can drag and drop different controls like button, text inputs, different galleries, and so on and so forth. You can simply, like in few hours, prototype how you foresee your application, show it to your customer or to your boss, get an approval on your UI and behavior, and then develop the actual application. So it can be useful for pro developers, like a prototyping tool as well. From resources standpoint, the first one is official documentation, some learning resources around Power Apps. The second one is an example how you can create a Power Apps for a list. So basically, you're creating a mobile app and connect SharePoint as a data source. The next one is how documentation how you can customize SharePoint list form. And next to the first one is Power Apps community forum. It contains a lot of questions and answers. So basically, most of the questions are already answered in there. So when I need to develop some Power App form, first what I do, if I have some kind of requirements, if I don't know how to implement them, I'm just Google them and I'll be redirected for sure to this Power Apps community. And the last URL is Power App Studio. It's a web interface where you can develop your Power Apps. Next one is Power Automate. Again, it's available in SharePoint Online and partially in SharePoint 2019. So in 2019, you can use SharePoint 2019 as a data gateway for Power Automate. So similarly to Power Apps, it's a service in Office 365 suite, and it allows you to automate different business processes by building workflows based on certain triggers and actions. So in SharePoint on premises, we had SharePoint workflows. Now we have Power Automate, but basically in Power Automate, you're creating flows or workflows as well. Power Automate allows you to integrate SharePoint with other Office 365 applications like Outlook, OneDrive, Yammer, and so on and so forth. And even you can integrate SharePoint with external apps like Twitter or Dropbox, and vice versa. So if you can integrate SharePoint to something, you can integrate something to SharePoint as well. So for example, you can create some flow that will run inside Outlook and collect some information from SharePoint. Another great feature of Power Automate, you can call any HTTP endpoint from the flow. The only remark here, it's a premium action, so it has a separate licensing. So first look into the licensing before using this endpoint. And Power Automate or Power Flows contains large number of triggers from SharePoint. So when item created or updated, when document was created, when something was attached, when the page was created, and so on and so forth. And it also contains a lot of different templates that you can use. So for example, the good scenario, again, in SharePoint on premises, we had this incoming email feature when you could provide the email address in your document library inside SharePoint. And when your document was uploaded to this document library, the email was automatically sent to this email address. So there is a template from Power Automate that allows you to implement the same behavior. As I said, not unique. Power Automate is not unique to SharePoint, and you can use Power Automate in any other Office 365 application as well. So when and where to use? To create workflows for SharePoint list items, documents, pages, etc., etc. And it also allows you to build, to implement easy-to-build integrations between SharePoint and other internal or external applications. And also, Power Automate allows you to create bots inside Microsoft Teams. So if you are familiar with Power Virtual Assistant, I believe this is the correct name. So Power Virtual Assistants are partially based on flows as well. And there is also a template provided by, I don't know, either it's Microsoft Teams team or Power Automate team, that you can add a flow application inside your Microsoft Teams and run flow actions from there. From resources perspective, the first one is marketing information around Flow, and why I decided to include it here, because you can learn some marketing details, or sorry, licensing details from there. The second one is official documentation with all the what is available in the Power Automate, how to create flows, and so on and so forth. And the next one is, again, it's a community blog that provides you information how to learn resources around Power Automate. And the next one is a simple example how to how to create Power Automate flow inside your SharePoint document library. And the last one is community. It's basically the same URL as for Power Apps, where you can find answers around Power Automate flows as well. The last customization block that we have is Microsoft 365 PNP or Microsoft 365 Patterns and Practices. It's available in SharePoint on-premises and SharePoint Online. It's an open source initiative that is coordinated by SharePoint Engineering, and it's a set of resources on top of SharePoint that simplifies SharePoint administering, development, and even usage. So currently you can think of Microsoft 365 PNP as a Microsoft 365 development ecosystem and even beyond, because it's not only about development. It covers most of commonly used scenarios around SharePoint, Teams, Microsoft Graph, learning pathways for SharePoint, some user documentation as well. It also expands SharePoint out-of-the-box development and administering tools. Sorry, so for example, there is SharePoint PowerShell and there is Microsoft 365 PNP PowerShell. It provides tons of helpful materials, including blogs, podcasts, learning videos, and so on and so forth. And currently, official documentation and guidance on SharePoint development is under the Microsoft 365 PNP umbrella as well. And of course, it consolidates and thrives the community. I would say that in Microsoft 365 PNP, we have the greatest tech community in the world. And I would be thankful for that for Microsoft 365 PNP initiative as well. So some selective parts of PNP Core, it's a .NET library to work with different SharePoint artifacts in .NET. PNP.js, similar, but for Microsoft 365 resources in JavaScript. PNP PowerShell to work with artifacts of SharePoint using PowerShell. SharePoint Dev Solution set of solutions that you can use in your environments. For example, column formatter is a solution. Modern search web parts is a solution. Next one is SharePoint Framework reusable controls. These are React controls that you can reuse in your SharePoint Framework solutions. SharePoint Lookbook, where you can see how you can customize, create beautiful sites in your SharePoint and even provision these sites automatically on your environment. When and where to use? Well, everywhere. Currently it's a must for SharePoint or Microsoft 365 developer, power user, administrator to be familiar with Microsoft 365 PNP. Resources, you just need to remember the first one, a KMS/M365PNP. It's an entry point to all other resources. There are two organizations in GitHub where you can find all the samples, all the solutions. There is a YouTube channel for all the videos around Microsoft 365 PNP. And you can also reference SharePoint blog, SharePoint development blog as well, because a lot of information from Microsoft 365 PNP is posted there as well. And here is kind of the summary table that will be useful probably for you after the session. So it just displays what tool you can use if you need to achieve a specific goal. Basically, it's kind of wrap up of the all these tools, all these customizations block inside SharePoint. I have a few more slides here. I will just go through them really quickly. The first one, there is still some classic tools available in SharePoint Online, but I would not recommend to use them only if you really need them for some reason. So SharePoint Publishing and Branding is still available in SharePoint Classic UI sites. You can still use SharePoint Designer in same classic sites. Sandbox solutions are still available. And you can use on classic SharePoint pages, you can still use content editor web part and script editor web part. But again, it's better to be future-proof, so don't use classic tools. They're still there and they will be there for probably a few more years, I would say, but try to not use them. Some additional tools, Microsoft Azure, I mentioned that you can use Microsoft Azure to host your web applications, SQL databases, and so on and so forth. Fluent UI is the official framework to develop your UI for SharePoint, for modern SharePoint. Microsoft Graph Toolkit, set of components, web components that allow you to easily work with Microsoft Graph. SharePoint Framework Docker Image by Valdec Mastercards. If you're familiar with Docker containers, you can use Docker Image to start your development for SharePoint Framework. SPGo for Visual Studio Code. It's an add-in for Visual Studio Code that allows you to connect to your SharePoint document library and dynamically change the documents in there. So, for example, if you have some GS or CSS published to your SharePoint site collection, you can connect to it using SPGo in Visual Studio and edit it using IntelliSense, using syntax highlighting, and so on. And I would also use these hashtags in Twitter, SharePoint, SPFx, Microsoft 365, and SPHelp if you have any questions. I don't know if we have any time for Q&A, but first of all, you can use this QR code for the slides, and I believe David will share these slides later after this session as well. And if you want to go deeper to this topic, to SharePoint Online customization and development toolset, there is a Udemy course for that, my Udemy course for that. So feel free to go there. It has more information. It has more like examples, how exactly you can use this or that tool, and how you can combine these tools to create a really good integrated into Microsoft 365 solution that is integrated in Microsoft 365. And that's all I have. I'm here to answer any questions if there are any in the chat.
Okay, so if anybody that's attending has questions, type them in the Q&A section, and I'll ask Alex. Alex, can you say the Q&A session also, or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So just waiting. Don't know if we're going to have any or not.
All right.
I don't think we're going to have any. So I'm going to just really quickly go back and okay, so just real quick, I want to wrap up the meeting. Alex, thank you for presenting today. It was a great topic, especially for me as a developer. I like going over all the different ways that we can customize our SharePoint experience online. And again, I'm going to have this meeting posted on our YouTube site for the recordings, and then I'll make links available to the slides shortly as soon as I get that done. I just want to go back here during the meeting. I went ahead and made a link for the recording, so all the recordings at our website will be posted here, and you'll be able to see all the links to the different recordings, and these also contain links to slides and everything too. So anyway, with that, Todd says, thanks, Alex, for a nicely organized list of tools. So
thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And thanks, everybody, for attending. And have a great rest of November. We'll see you in December.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Okay, bye.